Really quickly, before we get started with the actual, bits and pieces of this video, I wanted to make a quick announcement for you guys. Later this week, in celebration of the release of Limit Break to the Vanguard Zero mobile game, I'll be holding the TrueChampionSteven's Breaking the Limits Marathon. See what I did there? It's going to be a really awesome 24-hour event where we do all kinds of pack openings, deck builds, play testing, viewer fights, and a very special Vanguard Zero challenge called the Zero Lock. I'm not going to spoil too much of the details here in this video, but just know it's going to be super awesome and you guys should definitely check it out. Links to my Twitch channel down below. I would definitely love to see you guys in there. Alright, with all that stuff out the way, let's go ahead and head over to Steven for the actual information about what today's video is going to be about. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Steven Rodriguez. I'm your True Champion, and today I'm in a different room. Yes, this is not my streaming room. This is not my bedroom. This is a different room in the house. I have a brand new camera, which means I have a brand new recording setup for you guys for these fun, piece to camera shoots. Hopefully you guys like the new angle. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. I'm really excited about it. But all that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about what today's video is going to be about. If you guys are new here, I do this series on my channel called the Best Deck Series for Vanguard Zero. Basically, I go over all the new cards that are going to be coming out in the future set, and I kind of give you guys my predictions as to what the best decks are going to be from that set in the Set 5 meta, after we look at their strengths and weaknesses, overall matchup spreads, skills, synergies, all that fun stuff. It's a really fun series and you guys seem to really enjoy it. Originally, I wasn't actually going to make this series for Limit Break because I thought Limit Break was going to be released with Set 5 and Set 6, which would have been way too long of a video, way too complicated for me to go through everything. I had a different thing planned for Set 5 and Set 6, but we got the announcement today from the Bushy Road newsletter that Set 5 is most likely going to be the only thing we get on July 1st, or should I say later this Wednesday. So, I can make this video and have it be just as long as the other ones and make total sense. Let's go. So that's right, guys. In today's video, I will go over the 4 new clans that come out as a result of Set 5 Breaker of Limits, and then I will go through their matchups, matchup spreads, synergies, effects, what I think of the decks in general, and then at the very end of the video, I will give you guys my top 3 predictions as to what the best decks are going to be in Set 5, so you can plan ahead, maybe sit on some decks you might have already because they're still going to be perfectly viable in Limit Break meta, or get ready to open some awesome packs and have a good idea of what you want to pull and craft for as the meta evolves in Set 5. If you guys are excited for the release of Set 5 or just hype about the brand new recording setup we got here, why don't you let me know that by leaving a like on this video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking that bell for notifications so that way you guys know when my videos go live for you. With all that being said, let's go ahead and hop back over to the command center and see what cards we got coming out. Alright, y'all, here we are back at the stream setup. You guys are familiar with this setup. We got the Vanguard Zero meta database here. We're gonna click on it and see what kind of cards we got coming on. The first clan that I want to look at is probably the biggest of the 4 clans that come out in terms of hype and in terms of card pool. I think every clan except for Great Nature got 3 triple rares for this set. So, yeah. We're gonna start with Gold Paladin. And the big stars of Gold Paladin, you already know, is going to be, if you guys don't know already, is Incandescent Lion Blonde Ezel, who is going to be a rank reward at some point as well, fun fact. And here is the boy. If you guys want to know why he's so busted, I'll give you guys a fun little story. But first, let's talk about his skill. His first skill is Limit Break 4. If you guys don't know what Limit Break actually is, it's the brand new mechanic that comes out as a result of this set, where basically these skills are allowed to be used if you have a certain threshold of damage as signified by the skill. So this says Limit Break 4. That means if you have 4 or more damage, you can activate the skill. And then his Limit Break skill is Counterblast 1 to look at the top 4 cards of your deck and call a card. Increase this unit's power by that unit's power until the end of the turn. And then his second effect is during your turn, this unit gets power plus 1k for each of your rear guards. It's like a mini little Alfred effect. So, what's cool about this card? There's several things cool about him. Back in the original game, he was 10k. In this game, he's 11k. Back in the original game, his skill was Counterblast 2, call the top card. In this game, it's Counterblast 1 to then excavate the top 4 cards and pick one.
So they increased this card's versatility, this card's power, and his consistency, as well as kind of his defense. So they kind of just gave like Ezel all the buffs in the land, and that plus the inherent aggression that Gold Paladin has. If you guys want to know, Gold Paladin is a similar Paladin deck to kind of Royal Paladin, but instead of like having advantage be like their big thing when it comes to superior calling units, they really do it for aggression. They call lots of units all the time to get powerful boards that they can then use to then rush their opponent. So the thing with this deck is that instead of having like 1 or 2 superior calls that you then retire your opponent's unit to get advantage like Royals, or call cards then sacrificing to gain advantage over your opponent like Shadows, you just call cards every single turn to aggress your opponent, and through that natural aggression and superior calling of cards, you gain advantage like a Paladin deck does. And this is going to be the main grade 3 for a while. And we actually just got announced the cross ride for him, Paladin Ezel. So he's going to be around for a long time. So if you want to play Gold Paladins, consider picking this guy up, or consider grinding for him during the season to which he is a ranked reward. The other 2 main triple rares in the set are White Hair in the Moon Shadows Pelennor and Player of the Holy Bow Vivian. So Vivian is going to be probably like one of the best grade 2s, but I don't think she's going to be like a necessary card in the deck. Her skill is when this unit attack hits a Vanguard, counterblast 1 to call the top card of your deck. This is actually a really good skill in Zero, because say for example your opponent's at 4 damage and you're on a grade 3, and then you swing with Vivian and then you swing with your Vanguard. If your Vivian hit, which you know it's going to because they're at 4 damage, you can actually call the top card of your deck, which if it's another like thing that you can attack with, you can actually swing for that last damage. Say your opponent had 1 PG on your Vanguard swing basically. So it kind of forces that like little extra superior call thing you want. There's also cards in Gold Paladin that have effects of it being superior called. And then the last grade 3 or triple rare that I should say for Gold Paladins is White Hair in the Moon Shadows Pelennor. This is the other like main limit break card that comes out in the set besides Garmor, and then his limit break skill is when this unit attacks, put 1 of your rear guards to the bottom of your deck to have 2 of your units get power plus 5k. So that's a really cool skill. It's really good for number fixing late game. If you want to try and push your opponent with your rear guards, you really well can. And then his other skill, which is like the real reason why you play this card actually, is when placed from deck, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 2 or greater, put this unit on Vanguard and as stand and change it to the Vanguard. Then this unit gets power plus 5k and plus 1 critical. So basically, if you call this off of like an Ezel, a Lapier, or a Vivian, you can actually just then ride it, have it get a free 5k and a crit. You can actually, it could essentially be a restand as well, because like I said, cards like Vivian can superior call during the battle phase. So cards like Vivian are kind of what make cards like Pelennor really strong. So while Pelennor might not be a 4 of, it might be like a solid 2 to 3 of, especially if you use the starter Spring Breeze Messenger, because he has a on boost skill that you can counterblast to put him in the soul and look at the top 3 cards to call a card. So you can actually use him to extend that play as well. So like there's a lot of just really cool synergies that set 5 Gold Paladins have that can really push the aggression in their favor. Later on, when cards like Spec Duke or even Chrome Jailer to an extent come out, you can play a more advantage game with your opponent by like restanding, drawing cards, getting multiple attacks, versus just like having just straight up just balls to the wall, call cards, turn them sideways and win the game, which is kind of what Ezel is, but he does a great job at it. Also, a cool thing I want to keep in mind here is that Ezel, or Gold Paladins in general, kind of like they eliminate retired decks. Like Good Stuff Kagero becomes way less good. Good Stuff Kagero becomes almost bad in Gold Paladin meta, because it does not matter how many cards you retire. All they gotta do is ride a blonde Ezel, and they can just call as many cards as they want, because his superior call effect is not once per turn. So if you have 3 counterblasts, you can call 3 units and pump this guy up super hard. So it is just like the best superior call deck in the game in terms of just getting consistent boards and using that board to then apply pressure. So Gold Paladins will be a pretty strong deck well into set 9 even, like probably well into Break Ride era, and then in Break Ride era they get tons of good break rides. So this is a really strong limit break deck. Some really cool support cards that come out are Trip. This is the damage unflipper or countercharger. You got your a really cool kind of strategy that's going to come out with this deck is going to be the Criff engine, where you like try to use Criff plus Gareth plus Bowman, who are the vanillas, and you use them to superior ride blonde Ezel, so you can kind of like rush your opponent when they're like at grade 1, and you play like 9 crits, and you just like kill them as fast as possible. It's a really wombo-y build, but you'd be surprised how often it works. I'm really interested to see like how big of a splash Gold Paladin makes in the global meta, especially if we consider that we might get the nerf for MLB around the same time that set 5 comes out. It's not for sure whether or not we're going to get the nerf as soon as set 5 drops, but it's highly speculated that we will, because that nerf came around during Limit Break era, and set 5 is the introduction of the Limit Break era for Vanguard Zero. I'm really interested to see kind of how great this deck is, because it was already super good in JP, but it might become even better now that MLB might not be rearing his ugly head as much as it used to. So yeah, Ezel's going to be a really strong deck. Alright, moving on to personally one of my favorite decks out of this set, we have Narukami, or specifically, Dragonic Kaiser Vermillion. This card is so good. Alright, let me talk about his Limit Break skill first, which is his big selling point. Counterblast 2, this unit gets power plus 2k and the following ability until end of turn. This unit battles every unit in your opponent's front row in one attack. You can't intercept this, their front row just gets murked. It's essentially you want to think of it like a blockade effect that then retires the front row, which is super strong. And he has an extra skill that he didn't used to have. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, power plus 3k until end of turn. This card, like the buffs they gave him were very subtle, the free 3k as well as the Counterblast 2 instead of Counterblast 3, like very subtle but really good for the viability of this card. So Narukami is kind of like, so you know how like Gold Paladins are very similar to Royal Paladins in that they superior call cards as their big shtick? Well, Narukami is very similar to Kagero in that their main shtick is retiring or binding cards. But instead of binding cards or retiring cards to just gain advantage over their opponent and restanding to draw a bunch of cards like Kagero tends to do, it's just pure retire and then pure aggression. We get rid of those units so that way we don't have to attack them and we can just attack the Vanguard instead. That is the whole point of Narukami. They have cards that stop intercepts like the what are they called? The Desert Gunners. Where are they? Yeah. So they have this Desert Gunner archetype that just gets rid of intercepts on play. They have a grade 2 and a grade 1 that do that. They have Garuda that can countercharge to keep letting you retire more things. You have amazing grade 3s like Dungari or Indra that are just inherently powerful and aggressive cards. And it's just going to be a super aggressive deck. Probably one of the most aggressive decks in the format. It literally just is just like ride and swing sometimes. Like it's going to be super simple, but it's going to be super powerful. One of my favorite cards that come out is actually going to be the Lizard Soldier Saishin, because he's essentially a check to a lot of powerful starters that might exist, like Spring Breeze, Kriff, Wingall Brave. If that doesn't get nerfed, like I said, it might not. Saishin is going to be like the ultimate, just like, hey, Forerunners are a problem, because his skill is when this unit attack boosts a Vanguard, counterblast 1 for this unit into the soul to retire a grade 1 or less. That's a really important thing. You can retire really just good boosters with this card. So this is going to be a really powerful card as well for the deck. And the deck is just going to have like a bunch of generic good stuff in it. Like you're going to have Vermillion, you're going to have Jin, who's a really hit stick that can help you hit good numbers. You're going to play your damage adders that allow you to enable Limit Break, which if you guys don't know what they do, basically on play they give you a damage so you can get closer and closer to Limit Break, even if your opponent is trying to say damage deny you, which is a really sound strategy in Limit Break format because it allows you to kind of stop your opponent from aggressing you and you can achieve your skills first, basically, which is a really good way to win. But having damage enablers or damage adders is going to be a really good way for us to circumvent that kind of play. So while Vermillion might not be the most like big brain of the decks that come out, it'll definitely be one of the most powerful because it just doesn't care what your opponent does. It just retires your things and then swings at you, and it actually has a way to maintain its resources very well. It's going to be really consistent, and I think it's going to be one of, if not the best deck out of this set alone, out of just terms of popularity and overall power. Some other cool cards that come out, you actually get like a lot of double rares in this set, like Death Scythe, who's a Berserk Dragon clone. You get Stormbringer Dragon, who like lets you search for grade 3s. You know, with this card could be important during Break Right era, or even during Legion, if that ever happens. And then you have like 2 other grade 3 triple rares. All the triple rares for this clan are grade 3, and they kind of aren't needed for the most ideal version of the deck. The only thing you really need out of this set for Narukami is your 4 Vermillion. These two, like, you can get 4 of them, and that's great. I would say Indra is better as a 4-of because he requires more copies of Indra to gain criticals, which is pretty cool. But he's also not Limit Break reliant. Keep that in mind. Dungaree and Vermillion are, so it's like a little thing to keep in mind. He's like a really cool early game card that you can use to like push damage against your opponent. And then Dungaree is like a really just good backup ride in case you don't get Vermillion because he can bind things in the front row and then push for more damage. Plus, you can like in the future, once we get Dungaree Unlimited, who's this guy's cross ride, you can actually enable some really cool plays with cross ride and gaining crits, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this deck is just like pure aggression, pure just like, I don't want to say unga bunga, but it's going to be kind of like that. It's going to be just like call your dudes, kill their dudes, swing at them, and then do it again. It's going to be really simple. It's going to be super strong though, and this deck should definitely be respected, should be on your radar, and you should probably consider playing it yourself. Alright, this is probably going to be like one of the most fun decks that come out of this set. It probably won't be the most competitive out of all 4 of them that come out in terms of popularity, but I will say in the future, once set 7 drops with the release of Polaris as another great grade 3 for the deck, it'll become super tier 1 and really powerful, and personally, this is one of my favorite decks of all time. So, Great Nature. Great Nature is the 3rd Limit Break deck that comes out, and the main 2 things that we get are going to be the Guardian of Truth Lox ride chain, as well as School Hunter Leopold, and a bunch of just generic good stuff for Great Nature. What does Great Nature do? Great Nature is going to be the rearguard-centric support combo clan. Their job is to pump up their rearguards to create really great numbers, and then out of retiring those rearguards, because they pumped them up so much, they actually gain advantage or try and gain advantage. So it's kind of similar to Shadow Paladins in the sense that units get retired, but it's more of as a result of your skills versus a cost for your skills. So that makes sense. The retiring of cards happens as a result of you giving them power versus you needing to sacrifice cards to actually trigger effects. So let me give you an example of this. We have the main grade 3 probably, or the most popular, best, consistent grade 3, whatever you want to say, School Hunter Leopold. He has a skill, Limit Break, counterblast 1 to have one of your rearguards get the following ability. So he gives this ability to rearguards during the main phase. When this unit is retired during your end phase, call this card to rearguard circle. So this is kind of like the opposite of what I'm talking about, right? So when a unit is retired because of an effect, it actually comes back. This allows you to not lose anything because your units are getting retired. His other skill, though, is much better at representing my point. Vanguard Rearguard, when it attacks, you may have one of your other rearguards get power plus 4k until end of turn. At the end of the turn, retire that unit. So you pump something up, give it power, and then it dies at the end of the turn. And then there's all these fun cards like Lox, Hamskay, Duckbill, Pencil Squire, Hamskay that can either give effects that happen on retire, or they themselves have effects that happen when they get retired. For example, Pencil Knight Hamskay, when he's retired during your end phase, add 2 Pencil Knight Hamskay from your deck to your hand. You basically +2 and thin your deck out by 2 when this card's retired. So that's kind of the thing I'm talking about. It's going to be a combo deck based off of pumping up your rearguards and then retiring them at the end phase to then gain effects. The other main grade 3, and probably like one of the best backups, or even the best main Vanguard, honestly, is going to be Guardian of Truth Lox, at least for set 5 anyway. He's the ride chain for this deck. I believe it works kind of like the Riviera ride chain, where on ride, if you ride the grade 1 Lox, you can search for the grade 2 Lox, and then the grade 2 Lox gets written on, there's on-ride effects, all that fun stuff. Their on-ride effects generally are target 2 units, give them plus 4,000 power, and then at the end of the turn, retire them and draw a card. That's the ride chain, both the skills, the grade 2 and the grade 3. That could be cool. There's going to be some fun deck lists out there that try and play like a hybrid Leopold Lox list or a pure Lox list. It's going to be pretty exciting to see what comes out of this. I'll be messing around with some Great Nature lists, so don't worry. But his main skill is 11k with the grade 2 and soul, whatever, and then Counterblast 1 and Persona Blast. He's actually not a Limit Break card, he's a Persona Blast card, which is a big thing to keep in mind, because then his skill is to have one of your other rearguards get power plus 4k and a critical until end of turn, and then retire that unit at the end of the turn. So he basically gives a rearguard criticals. So the early lists for Great Nature are probably going to play stand triggers to abuse Lox. So basically you give a thing plus 4k, attack with it, and then re-stand it with a stand trigger. It swings twice for 4 damage, which is pretty threatening. Being able to give a rearguard a plus critical and then give it power out of your other effect is really powerful in terms of aggression, and with the inherent consistency, advantage, and just draw power that Great Nature has. Accompanied with that, you can just get like some crazy combos off. One of the best cards that come out, in my opinion, is Coiling Duckbill. He won't be massively played at first because it's less about retiring and gaining advantage and more about retiring to gain aggression, and he's not the most aggressive card. Cards like Hamskate, Sea Otter, and the Grade 1 Locks are going to be more popular Grade 1s at first because they're naturally more aggressive / can just stay on the board and do good things. But once Polaris comes out and we have like a more generic build of Great Nature be the best version of it, Coiling Duckbill is going to be really strong. So his skill is, when placed during your main phase, one of your other rear guards gets the following ability. When this unit is retired during your end phase, draw a card. Really solid. It's a 1-for-1. If this card dies, you draw a card. If you combo that with Leopold, it becomes a hard +1. If you combo with cards like the Hamskate, it becomes a hard +1. Actually, +2 technically, because you get 2 cards now instead of 1. I'm so used to the old skill, which was just search for 1 instead of 2. And then, so yeah, Great Nature, while it doesn't get all the cards it needs out of set 5 alone to become super tier 1, it'll still be super solid and have really cool combos and definitely hold its own in the meta. But it just falls flat on its face in terms of like the fact that there's so many defensive triggers and the fact that its inherent aggression has to come from checking a stand trigger or getting a Persona Blast off, which isn't the most consistent thing in the world. In the future, when we get cards like Polaris who can guarantee multi-attack every single turn and gain power, the aggression of this deck will rise exponentially. That, coupled with its natural consistency, will be really strong for it. So, I love this deck too personally, and I'll be playing it all the time on stream and in videos for you guys, so don't worry, there'll be plenty of Great Nature around. It just won't be probably the best deck in set 5 meta. Set 7 meta, different story. Alright guys, here we are at the final clan. The reason why I saved Angel Feather for the last one is that I think it'll be the most confusing clan that we talked about today. It's the most expensive clan because you have to get 4-ofs of every single triple rare if you want the deck to be like super consistent and super solid. And it's also the most questionable because it's going to be a super popular deck, but it's inherently not the most consistent or the most aggressive of any of the decks we've talked about. And I feel like in Limit Break era, being both consistent and consistently aggressive is going to be how you win the game, because being able to pick and choose when you go for game or when you just deal a lot of damage to your opponent is a really good way to keep the advantage in Limit Break meta. And I feel like without inherent crits, retire effects, or gaining power a lot, Angel Feather really falls behind this category, but what it makes up for in this lack of offense, it makes up for in its amazing defense. It has cards like Chief Nurse Shamseal, who's going to be probably the main grade 3 for like the generic build of Angels, which will be like the best version at first. Her skill is when it attacks, you may put a card from your hand into your damage zone. If you do, add a card from your damage zone to your hand. If you guys don't know what Angel Feather is, it's basically like a hand toolbox deck where you use your damage zone as like an extended hand. So instead of having just your hand be the cards you have access to, you actually have access to your cards in your damage zone. And when you put cards in there, you can gain effects. When cards are in there, they can be called out and have effects. You can superior call from the damage zone. You can gain power from the damage zone. All fun stuff like this. This is a good example. When she attacks, you just get a free swap from your hand. If there's a PG in there, you can add it to your hand. If there's a good grade 2 you want for next turn, you can add it to your hand. If there's a grade 3 you want to call or ride next turn, you can add it to your hand. And then the main reason why you do it is to proc her other skill, which is always when a card is put into your damage zone, this unit gets power plus 2k until end of turn. This is part of the reason why she's a 10k base, is because the first time you ever take damage, she becomes a 12k base. And thanks to the mechanics of Zero, you always get 5k power added when you take a damage. So every time you take a damage, regardless of triggers or not, you get 17k base, which means that decks that if you get which means if you get a defensive trigger, you actually are a 22k base, which is really good. That puts a stop to a lot of decks that can't pump up their rear guards. So Chief Nurse Shamseal is going to be a very defensive grade 3 ride, which will help you extend the game really well. A really good backup to this will be Circular Saw Curiel, who's going to be like the main bay of Angel Feather, and she just gains power whenever she attacks as her Limit Break, and her Counterblast 2 effect lets you superior call from the damage zone to gain consistency and possible aggression. So these two go really well together because they just naturally combo together. You have Chief Nurse Shamseal to kind of just grind out the game, and then you have Curiel to come in and finish it off. One other archetype that will be coming out is the Ergodial Ride Chain. I'm going to briefly go over this. It's a regular ride chain, similar again to the Riviera ride chain. Look at the top 7, call the grade 2, whatever, all that fun stuff, 11k power. This one's shtick is when this unit attack hits a Vanguard, Counterblast 2 and Persona Blast, discard a copy of this card to heal 1 damage. This is the epitome of just like, I'm not gonna die, because you can guarantee a heal, basically, especially in Vanguard Zero, with on-hit effects essentially being free. The other two triple rares in the deck are going to be the no-seals, the grade 2 and the grade 1. And they both have the same effect of on-place, swap a card from your damage zone to your hand. Really simple. One of them's a grade 2, it's really cool. And the grade 1, this used to actually have a different effect. It used to be a on Guardian Circle skill, which used to be even better because you could like cycle during your opponent's turn, gain defense because you proc this without actually having to take a damage. But because you don't actually guard in Vanguard Zero, this essentially got like a pretty bad nerf. But being able to have another card that on place does it increases your offensive capability, which is really the problem the deck has right now. So while it is a nerf overall to what the card does, it actually is kind of a bonus to the actual deck itself in the game, which is pretty cool. Let's see, anything else I should mention? We have a Libra Cologne that can draw you a card counterblast too. This will be good in this deck because it doesn't really counterblast at all, so you can use this to kind of gain advantage. You have the 8k damage adder, that'll be good for the deck, keep that in mind. A really awesome PG. Oh, this is actually a really good start. This will probably be the best starter for the deck, like long term, because it's a recyclable heal, so you can just like naturally have more defense. Remember how busted OTT was in set 1 with Lozenge Magus being able to recycle itself? Well, Angel Feather does that too. Yeah, guys, that'll go ahead and do it for the overview of what all the cards do in this set. Let's go ahead and talk about what my predictions are going to be in terms of their matchup spreads, as well as just how they deal in the overall set 5 meta. So, like I said before, Gold Paladins I feel like is going to be like the epitome of rearguard aggression and consistency. Like, they obliterate retired decks like Good Stuff Kagero. They just have natural consistency and natural power that comes out of nowhere. They have some pretty abusable effects in Pelennor. They have some pretty wombo combo decks like, all crit Ezel, all crit superior call Ezel, and whatnot. So I feel like it'll make a big splash right away. But as the meta evolves and develops, MLB Dote will still have its place at checking this deck and making it like not oppressive in any way. So it has its bad matchups, it has its faults. So I don't think it'll be like overall like the most powerful deck, but it'll definitely have its place at tier 1.5, maybe even tier 1 if it gets like super popular. I think Narukami is going to be like the ultimate check. Like, if you cannot deal with Vermillion just constantly swinging at your front row, whether that means refilling your board back up to counter push them, or you not being able to defend yourself, you're going to fall behind, you're going to lose to this deck. And I think a lot of decks that lack draw power, like Gold Paladin, do that. Same goes for like decks like Spike Brothers to an extent. Mirror Match, actually. Like, Mirror Match for this is pretty tough because you're both just so aggressive, and again, the only draw power you have is none. You don't have any, so it's gonna be pretty scary in Mirror Match. I think in terms of Vermillion v like Dote, the Battle of the Dragons, I think it's pretty 50-50, because again, Dote has like that thing of like, sure, I gain a lot of advantage, but I can still die because this deck, through cards like Jin as well as his own skill to gain 3k, can just constantly pressure you with numbers. And I don't think Vermillion will play that many crits, but you can play like 4 crit in this deck, and that could be pretty scary in terms of pushing for damage. So, I don't know. So, I think this deck will probably be the biggest like tier 1 deck out of these 4 that I've talked about, and it'll make the biggest impact, and it'll be like the ultimate check to any deck. Like if you want to be a good deck in set 5 meta, you need to be able to hold your own against Vermillion. Great Nature, I kind of touched on it a little bit. I kind of said that this was going to be like the most fun deck out of these 4, like messing around with the lists, playing certain locks counts, playing a pure locks list, playing a pure Leopold list, like it's going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy testing this deck and having fun with cards like Barcode Zebra, who can like superior call, Compass Line's amazing, 11k base, really good for turn 2 defense, less important in this meta, but more important later on when Aquaforce comes out. I'm going to enjoy playing my Otters, my Duck Bills. I love my Duck Bills. Hamskays are awesome. Like this deck has so many good things about it. But what it's lacking is the ability to just consistently end the game. It has really powerful turns where it can just like push for game out of nowhere, which is great. But that's not a consistent way to kind of win and be good in a meta. It's a good deck, but it's not like the best deck. So I feel like while it will be able to beat decks like Vermillion or even Gold Paladins, it won't be able to consistently do it. But I do love this deck, and I will play it as much as I can. And then finally we have Angel Feather. So again, I want to reiterate that I feel like in set 5 meta, the most important things is how aggressive you can be and how consistently aggressive you can be. Can you keep it up if your opponent retires your front row, or if they retire your boosters, or if you're not able to draw certain combo pieces? Can you still find a way to get 2 to 3 attacks against your opponent every single turn? These are going to be the things that test Limit Break decks and make them survive or not survive in set 5 meta. And I feel like the only problem that Angels have is their lack of consistent rearguard power. They need to have everything go their way to even get a sense of aggression or 3 attacks against your opponent every single turn, which they can consistently get cards on the board. That's not the problem. The problem is just getting enough power to push through in the late game to try and win. One defensive trigger here and there, and your entire turn is just ended. One extra intercept that your opponent just superior called out of the deck, and you can't finish them off the next turn. You know, like, it has no like game-winning play, which I feel like in this kind of meta is hard because so many decks stay at 4 damage or want to be at 4 damage that having a game-winning play that you can go for turn after turn after turn after turn is a really good way to win because every deck wants to be around that 4 or 5 damage mark. A cool thing that I thought about was like how busted would Angels be if like their effect said whenever a card is put into a damage zone. Like imagine if you got power-ups every time you dealt damage to your opponent. That I thought that would be like a really cool rework for Angels. It wouldn't make sense, but it'd be cool. It'd be cool. So I love Angels. Everyone loves Angels. It'll be super consistent, super good, but will it be the most powerful? Will it be the best deck out of set 5? I don't think so. Now that I've gotten all the overviews of matchups, skills, synergies, strengths, and weaknesses out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about my 3 predictions for the best deck in the set 5 meta. Alright guys, what have we learned today? We learned about what cards are coming out in set 5. We learned about what their overall strengths and weaknesses are, and I gave you guys kind of a rundown of what they're good against and what they're bad against in terms of matchup spread. So what does this mean for the whole of set 5 meta if you include the set 4 decks, the set 3 decks, the set 2 decks, and onwards? What's going to be the best deck coming out of set 5 meta? Really quick, I want to give an honorable mention to what I think will be the best tier 1.5 deck in the game, and that's going to be Beast Deities. Specifically Beast Deity Astral Dragon / Perfect Razor. This is going to be the best like tier 1.5 deck. Like if like the 3rd place deck didn't exist, this would be 3rd place, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is because Perfect Razor / a pure Beast Deity deck is really good at checking other Limit Break decks, being that it's Perfect Razor and it has an inherent crit so you can control your opponent at 3 damage while also being aggressive to them, or being a Beast Deity Astral Dragon deck and being able to push them really hard if they are at 4 damage, and you're really good against the set 4 decks in terms of being able to control them and gain advantage over them. I talked a little bit about a video a few weeks ago about the best anti-meta deck for set 4 and how it was Beast Deities Pure, and it still is. So I really think it's going to be a strong contender if people put in the work for it, and if it becomes popular enough, it'll become probably one of the best decks in the meta. And I'm excited to see that if we get the nerf to MLB, if people are going to want to try and do just like different things than they did in JP, because we're in a very special place in the global server where we have the JP meta to go off of, but we do have different things from time to time. Like we have cards that come out earlier, we have nerfs that happen that they didn't get in JP until much later on, so you never know what our meta is going to actually look like, which is why, again, this is a prediction video. I'll be making a more proper tier list video with all the decks that exist later on once the meta becomes defined and we know more about it. But the part that you all came here to see, what are the best 3 decks in my opinion? Number 3, going right into it, is going to be Dote. As much as I love Draconic Overlord at the end, he will only be the 3rd best deck. And the reason is that, while Bushiroad and Game Studio did a really great job of balancing Crossride and Limit Break to where Limit Break doesn't just like invalidate Crossride, or Crossride doesn't invalidate Limit Break, which sometimes can happen, they actually live very well together in terms of balance, because Limit Break just like naturally gets checked by inherent crits or really strong pressure or the ability to kind of control for damage and whatnot. Crossrides get checked by just really strong rear guards and really strong vanguards, which Limit Break does create. So there's like some natural checks and balances there for sure, which I love. But what faults Dote is that, again, I've said it like 18 times, but this is the big thing. This is the big lesson here, guys. Whatever is aggressive and consistently aggressive is going to be the best deck in set 5 meta. And Dote, while it is consistent, it's not the most aggressive deck in the game. It's a very advantageous deck which can breed aggression because over time, eventually you attack them enough until they die. It's not going to be the most naturally aggressive. It won't do the best job at controlling for Limit Break unless you're playing a 9 crit Dote deck, which if you are, might bump this one up a little bit higher on the list. But I'm going to go for the generic 9 draw, super consistent Dote list that we've all been seeing on the ladder right now. That's what's going to be number 3 as of set 5 meta. Moving on to number 2, we've got Dragonic Kaiser Vermillion, also known as Narukami at number 2. This is like really any Narukami deck as long as it plays 4 Vermillion. I don't care what else you're playing because it really doesn't matter. Once you're on Vermillion, you'll be winning games. Whatever else you want to play is your decision. I really like this deck. I said it before, I'll say it again. I think it's the natural check. Like, if you can beat Narukami, you're a good deck. And I feel like a lot of decks in set 5 meta can't beat Narukami as consistently as they would like to. The deck is just so naturally aggressive while also kind of being controlling at the same time. Like, there are so many turns where you will kill your opponent's front row and they only call 1 unit back the next turn, or they won't call a unit to have their front row be filled. So like, they're trying to counter you, but by doing that they're being less aggressive against you, and then you just call a Desert Gunner and stop that 1 intercept, and then you attack them anyway without wasting your limit break. Like, there's some really cool things you can do. They kind of outplay your opponent if they try to outplay you. And so like, I think a really good Narukami player will rule the set 5 meta despite being kind of like a non-advantage based deck, which is very rare to see in Vanguard. Usually you see like the most advantageous decks that superior call the most or draw the most cards. Those are generally the best decks. But in a game like Vanguard Zero, where all you gotta do is kill your opponent as fast as possible, a really aggressive sort of advantage deck is going to be what rules. So that's why I think Narukami is going to be the best one. Also, it's my favorite one out of this set, so I'm being a little bit biased here, but I think the bias stands. And finally, the number 1 deck, I hate to say it, it's not Gold Paladin, it's Royal Paladin. It's MLB, you guys. And I'm making this assumption like based off of if we get the nerf too. Like, so if we don't get the nerf, of course it's MLB. What else would it be? But if we do get the nerf, I think it'll still be MLB because we've seen the JP meta as global players. We've seen how MLB is unaffected in terms of the nerf, because cards like Libergal or just the natural consistency engines of Starcall and just being a blaster deck makes it still work and be just as powerful as it is. And having an inherent crit, like I said before, in Limit Break meta is really strong because you have a natural check to Limit Break without needing to like stop attacking or end your turn for no reason. You can actually attack them at 3 damage and have them PG it. So you get rid of a PG and you stop their Limit Break. That's so powerful. So MLB, regardless of nerfs or not, is going to be the best deck. If we do get the nerf, and if we get like an extra nerf on top of it because Game Studio realized that their first nerf wasn't enough to get rid of the power of MLB, maybe this list will change. But for now, the prediction is we either get the nerf or we don't. And either way, I think the deck is still going to be just as strong, if not, like, you could argue stronger, because MLB becomes kind of like a natural stop to Limit Break for a lot of decks. So it just like, I don't want to say invalidates Limit Break, but it can just sort of make Limit Breaks not work. Now, with damage adders and whatnot, this is very easy to circumvent, don't get me wrong, but if you don't have your damage adder, you don't do anything. So that's like a really just scary thought to have as a Limit Break player. You always gotta have that thing in the back of your mind. I gotta hang on to this damage adder because they can easily stop me from doing my thing. So those are my best deck predictions, you guys. If you guys agree with them, let me know down in the comments below. If you guys disagree, I'd love to have a fun conversation with you guys. Again, this is all in good fun, all in just trying to give you guys the news of what's happening later this week, and hopefully you guys gained some value. If you did, let me know by leaving a like on this video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking that bell for notifications. If you guys do have any lingering questions for me, don't be afraid to leave them down in the comments below, or better yet, hop into my Twitch channel. I go live every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time in the mornings, and I do all kinds of stuff in just chatting, so feel free to come, ask a question. Hopefully I can help you guys out. Also, don't forget this Wednesday, 9 a.m. PST, I'll be holding the TrueChampionSteven's Breaking the Limits Marathon in celebration of the release of Limit Break. I'm super excited. It's going to be an awesome 24-hour live stream. Come hang out. It's going to be a long day full of Vanguard Zero action, and I'm really excited for it. But as always, you guys, with all that being said, I have been your True Champion, Steven. Please be sure to work hard, rest easy, live well, stay safe, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.